Welcome to AdvaMed's Women's Executive Network webinar in collaboration with MedTechColor. We're excited to have everyone here for the Path to the C-Suite 2.0, the Career Leadership Pipeline. I will be your host for the program today. We also have a team of AdvaMed staff behind the scenes running the technical portion of the program. In just a minute, I will add a link to the chat with a guide that can help troubleshoot any issues, or again, please use the chat feature to message the staff if you're having any technical difficulties. A few reminders before we get started. One, we will provide the troubleshooting guide in the chat in just a minute. Feel free to refer to it throughout the session. For the best possible experience, please change your view to speaker view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. We will make sure that attendees' microphones are automatically muted during the program. Once we move into the breakout portion or any Q&A, you can feel free to unmute your microphone and turn on the camera. Timing allowing, we will definitely try to have time for Q&A before we go into the breakout sessions. If you do have a question, we ask that you do turn on your camera, raise your hand, and we will call on you to ask your question and have you turn on your microphone. If you do have questions as well that you don't feel that you want to answer on screen, please put them in the chat, and what we will try to do is have the panelists answer those either today live if time allows, or we will have them follow up and we can send follow up to all of you after the webinar. This session is being recorded and a link will be provided to you in an email within a few days, allowing the conclusion of the session. We will not record the breakouts. Those conversations are meant to be networking and free, open discussion, and are always kept confidential. Now let's get started. To kick off the program, I'd like to introduce Beth Lorden, Associate Director of R&D Global Business Operations at BD, and leading member of our Women's Executive Network Executive Committee, and who played a great role in co-organizing this webinar today. Beth, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sarah, for the kind introduction, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. As Sarah said, my name is Beth Lorden, joining you from BD, and also as a member of the WIN executive team. For those who are visually impaired, I'm a white female wearing a white blazer and a green shirt. I'm based in Durham, North Carolina, and it is a beautiful spring day here today. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with the AdvaMed Women's Executive Network, we work to engage women from across the MedTech sector by connecting with like-minded regional partner organizations, such as MedTechColor, to amplify our collective efforts to support female leaders, create networking opportunities that drive meaningful relationships, which we hope you'll use today's breakouts to help do, share ideas, inspire action, and solve the unmet needs in healthcare. We chose today specifically because it's at the close of Black History Month and also on the eve of Women's History Month. So we really feel there couldn't be a more opportune time to learn from the incredibly successful women that we have joining us today. Conversations like this are more important than ever to inspire and empower the next generation of diverse leaders in MedTech. Leaders, for example, like today's moderator, Vernessa Pollard. Vernessa is founding member and board secretary of MedTechColor and also leader of McDermott, Will, and Emery's FDA practice and co-chair of the Global Life Sciences practice. Welcome, Vernessa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth. It's such a pleasure to be here. And for those of you who are visually impaired, I am a Black female. I'm wearing a burnt orange blazer, and I have a locked hairstyle that is in a bob. At MedTechColor, we value partnerships and collaborations like our relationship with AdvaMed and WIN, because those organizations' goals are perfectly aligned with MedTechColor's mission. MedTechColor is a 501c3 organization focused on innovative strategies to diversify MedTech. And we do that through our extensive membership network, which includes MedTech professionals from students beginning their careers all the way up to CEOs. We do that also through our signature programs, which include our annual networking breakfast, our annual pitch competition for Black and Latin founders of early stage MedTech companies, and our collaborative community. which is focused on strategies to promote more diverse and inclusive medical device development, as well as clinical trials, which we launched with support from FDA. In my role as a medical device lawyer and in my various roles at MedTechColor, I have had the privilege of working with and learning from and collaborating with some of the most brilliant, thoughtful, and impactful women leaders in our industry. And this group of leaders that we're going to hear from today is an all-star group, and they represent the very best of us. They are each incredibly accomplished, but also grounded and accessible and real. And each of them has had a very unique path to leadership in the medtech industry. So our goal today is to learn from their journeys, connect, and grow through sharing. So I'm going to begin by asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves, provide your pronouns and a brief description of how you look physically to those of us who may be visually impaired and joining today. And I'd like to kick it off with Camille.
Well, thank you so much, Vernessa. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you are calling from. My name is Camille Chang Gilmore, and I'm the Vice President of Human Resources and the Global Chief Diversity Officer for Boston Scientific. I go by the pronouns of she, her, and hers. I am a Black Jamaican female. I live in Atlanta, but I am talking to you today from Washington, D.C. in a Black turtleneck with a bobbed haircut and some key clean highlights.
I love it. Angelique?
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Angelique Johnson. I am a Black female. I'm wearing a Black jumpsuit. I'm quite muscular, which is what most people notice. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am CEO and founder of MEMStim. We do medical R&D, medical device R&D for neurostimulators. Also moving into the wearable market space for sensors in that area. And I'm also very passionate about building the entrepreneurial mindset in the medical technology field. And so I have another company called Visionarium, and that's what we focus on.
Great, thank you, Angelique. Ravyn?
Hey, good people. My name is Ravyn Miller, and I am the Vice President of Portfolio Strategy and Business Development at Medtronic. I go by the pronouns of she, her, and hers. And for those that are visually impaired, today I am wearing braids. I put a little bling in my hair. I have on gold rim glasses that are circular in nature. I have on a brownish lipstick that is vegan from a Black female entrepreneur. And I have on a gold top with a soft pink sweater on top of it. I am excited to be here with my fellow warriors here on today.
Yes, Ravyn. And last but not least, Charisse.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this gracious invitation. My name is Dr. Charisse Sparks, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer for Applied VR, which is a digital therapeutics company. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am, for those that are visually impaired, I can't rock it like Ravyn, but kind of. I am wearing the natural look, so I'm a Black female. I wear no makeup. My grandmother didn't, so I'm not going to either. I have a low cut, very natural haircut with dangly earrings that you can barely see on the Zoom, but I'm wearing a gray blazer and a blue shirt. And I am in Kansas City, Kansas at this time. So happy to be here. Can't wait to have a chat with my girls and hope you all enjoy the ride with us today.
Oh, I love that. And as you can see just from the introductions, this is a great, dynamic, fun, but incredibly accomplished group of women. So I would like to start off our discussion with Charisse. We know each other in lots of different ways, professionally and socially, and we've become, fast friends. So when I reached out, or you got the call from WIN or MedTechColor to join this panel, why did you say yes? And what do you hope to bring to this discussion today?
Well, thank you, Vernessa. I don't think you need to ask. If you ask me to join and do something, I'm going to say yes, if it is within my power, because that is what you have done for me. When I was low, when I was down, when I needed some advice, when I actually needed a network to tap into. Vernessa was the first person there to open her books to me. And I believe later we're going to talk about sponsorship. And so I have a sponsor right here on this call. I also have one that I can see in the audience. I can't see very many people, but Jennifer Payne is out there in the audience. And so I want to give a shout out to Jennifer because she was also a sponsor of mine. But the thing that I want to hopefully bring to this conversation is just what Vernessa said, that we are open, we are approachable, and we are here for you to help you enjoy the journey, not only go on the journey, but enjoy the journey that you're on. Maybe look out for some of the pitfalls that you might encounter. Know that you are not alone. In my journey, I could look right and look left, and I didn't see anybody doing what I was doing as an orthopedic trauma surgeon. And so that is another reason that I want to be here, is I don't want to just be able to look up, look down, look right, and look left. I want to turn my head all around and see all the beautiful colors of the rainbow and see beautiful, powerful women leading in the way that we know that we can. So that is what I hope to offer as an insight today.
Absolutely wonderful. And humbling to think that I would be a sponsor for you, because I kind of think of you as being that for me. So I'd like to ask Ravyn, when we reached out to you and said, we're doing this panel, why did you say yes? What do you want to bring to this conversation? And maybe what do you want to get out of it?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So why I said yes was, one, I am very enthusiastic about this organization. I think about who this audience targets and what type of information you all are providing to this audience. And it's a powerhouse of an organization. It's real, it's raw. I think that matches my personality. I am real, I am raw, no filters. I just give it to you like I see it. The other piece then related to that is I wanted to demystify the career journeys that many of us take. When I was early in my career, I would look up at all the people that I admired and I'm like, oh man, they are so perfect. I'll never be able to emulate them. I don't know how they got there. And so I was like, as I started taking my steps up, I said, there are some things that I think could be beneficial to other people that are also coming along this journey, that they can learn, that they don't have to repeat the mistakes that I had to make, or have the questions out there and have to get to the level before they understood what they were actually taking on. So if I can be real, if I can be raw, if I can be authentic, and then if I can then share my learnings, I'm happy to do so.
Love that. We'll get back to that realness shortly. Angelique, how about you?
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's just an honor to be here among such wonderful rock stars. And of course, Vernessa, you're always shining bright and opening up opportunities for these things and these connections. So I'm so appreciative of that as well in MedTechColor. For me, I am here for selfish reasons. I just want to build more friends. When I started out, I come from the MEMS nanotechnology space in the medical device area, and even in the broad category of MEMS and nanotechnology, so microsystems, I would often be one of one, not only in US-based conferences, but at international conferences overseas, thousands of individuals, and I'm the only Black female, not African-American, but Black woman, period, at these conferences, at these meetings. And, as I've started my own companies and gotten into the startup game, that has not changed in my domain, in my area. And so I became very passionate about building more friends so that we can do the work of not only medical innovation and innovation equity, but also health equity and wealth equity. So I'm just looking for more people to add on to my team.
Love it. Love it. I think that's going to happen today. And Camille, finally, when we reached out to you, why did you say yes? What do you want to bring to this discussion? Why are you here today?
Well, I think the reason I'm here is based on what everyone has said, but one of the things I have in my home is a picture of a person who's reaching down and lifting someone up. And I think early on in my career, I think I've made it a point to think about how can I lift others, support others as I climb, because I know I didn't get here without the help of so many others. And one of the things that I want to do as I talk to young people, I'm reminded by a quote by Amanda Gorman, where she says, you have to think about what is your light. There's always going to be light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if we're brave enough to be it. And I think sometimes we have little voices in our heads that tell us that we're not enough. And I want to make sure that people understand that they are more than enough. They have the skills, the tools, the competencies to really reach to the heights that they want to reach. And sometimes we just need a little encouragement and need to silence that little person that's in our head. And if I can be that person that encourages another woman of color to see herself and elevate herself, I'm going to take every chance I got to do it.
I love that. So on that point, one of my mentors told me long ago that it's very important to have what he called professional sightlines, right? And those are people that you are looking at as a blueprint, as a model to follow. And, you know, looking at professional sightlines for what I do in the MedTech space, I certainly didn't see a lot of people who look like me. None, as a matter of fact. So I would love to hear from each of you, starting with Camille, about who were your professional sightlines, if any, and what was your journey? You're all very successful. You're all in leadership roles. Where did you start? What did you learn along the way? And how did you get here?
Wow. Well, I have 3 distinct mentors, and they're all very different. I will say that the first one was Dr. Paul Magelli, who was deceased, little short man, 4'11", powerful. And one of the things that he did for me is after I graduated from Penn State undergrad, he said to me, Camille, you need to go and get your MBA. And I was like, you don't even know me for like 5 hot seconds, but yet you want me to go get my MBA. Well, guess what? I did. And it changed my life. The second person was a lady by the name of Elin Cole. And let me tell you, she was like a velvet hammer. She could fire you today. You walk to the elevator, go home, and didn't even know you were fired. And maybe even called her that night to say thank you. And I remember watching her and just seeing how smooth and eloquent and how she made words count. Every word that was uttered from her mouth really planted a seed and created a harvest in a way that allowed you to just really embrace everything she said. It was almost magnetic. She knew how to use tone and tenor to really get her message across. And then my other mentor, his name is Ted Childs, and I don't know if many of you know him, but he is actually the guru of DE&I, an expert. And one of the things that he taught me how to be is to be bold and how to bring my voice into a room and to understand that you were not put in roles to be silent. And silent is not your excuse to avoid confrontation. You need to figure out how do you have conversations that allow the movement and progress, even if they're hard. And that's one of the things I had to learn. But I ultimately have some girlfriends too, and I call them my board of directors. And each member of the board of directors has a role. There's one that's the coach. There's one that's the planner. There's one that's that sage person that just gives you that wisdom. And then there's one that just keeps it real and says, you know what, you're wrong. You need to get it together. And I love having my board of directors because they keep me grounded, and I know I can go to each of them for different things.
I want to double click and on the point of boldness, right? As a Black woman who myself, I tend to be direct, I tend to project when I speak. How do you show up in a room where you may not feel like you have agency or a basis to be bold? And how do you speak with boldness while avoiding the angry Black woman trope? And I'll give that to any one of our panelists, but I also will get back to introducing your journeys as well. Anyone want to take that on?
I would love to say that one of the greatest tips that was ever given to me was not only reading the room, but finding the power in the room. And that's very, very different, because even the person that is giving the presentation, if you're a novice, you kind of think that's the person that you have to pay attention to. But it is the person that not only the person giving the presentation to, but everybody else is looking to for the reactions to that presentation in that room. And there may only be one, there may only be one time, but that singular person goes yes or no, and you feel the power dynamic. And then I have found it beneficial to then model the temperature of that person, not the person giving the speech, but the person that controls the power. So it takes you some time to learn and develop that skill. And it takes you some time to believe that you understand where that power is. But Camille is so right. Words matter. Tone matters. But you have to be you. So Vernessa, if you project, girlfriend, go ahead, project. Do your thing. Do your thing. Because once those words that you impart impact them, then they will listen no matter what the tone is. Whether you project or not, they will hear you. So I'm going to say, fail fast, but be attentive. Find not only the leader in the room, but find the power in the room.
I love that. Ravyn?
Yeah, can I take this one? So let's go, fam, let's go. So early in my career, I remember entering into a room and there was a sister that was sitting across from me and she was bad. And she was the presenter in the room, but she was also answering all the questions. And as she was answering the question, she had these nails on her fingers and she would tap her desk as she was talking. So she would be like, this is what I mean, this is what I said, And I remember exiting the room and someone said, boy, she's a pit bull, isn't she? And I went to my mentor at the time and I asked her, I replayed the situation to her. And she said, Ravyn, you have to start monitoring those situations, especially as a Black woman, because you don't want to become the baby pit bull. Okay. So then fast forward, call it 10 years later, I'm in a different room and we are having a pretty intense conversation. Anybody that's been in marketing and you start setting prices, it's always intense, right? So we were having an intense conversation and I got labeled as aggressive, that term aggressive, right? It's a buzzword. And I was like observing all the faces in the room to Dr. Sparks' point. And I said, all right, let me take a step back. So later that day, I went to my manager and I said, what is it about how I show up that is aggressive versus my white male colleagues in the room, it's acceptable? Because from my observation, we were having a conversation that mirrored one another in behavior, but I'm the only one that got labeled as aggressive. What I learned during that conversation with my manager is that they aren't seen as aggressive, they are seen as passionate. And I said, oh, so that's the word we're using. So I took that term of being passionate and started to associate that with my brand as well. So when I'm making a point that I want to really get across, I would even start my sentences with, hey, y'all, I'm very passionate about this particular subject matter. I'm very passionate about this position because I'm very passionate, right? And I would still get my point across, maybe lean in with the grin, but I meant what I said and I said what I meant. And that whole idea of aggression went away because I learned and picked up on the behavior of how people were branding themselves. Even though we had identical behavior, it was not being interpreted the same way.
Fantastic. So turning a negative into a positive and making it a part of your personal brand. I love that. Angelique, any thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, I mean, I think the advice given so far is so spot on and right on that word passion. For me, I'll say from a more pre-work, before you even enter the room, you have to own it when you walk in, and you have to believe that you're an atmosphere changer. So when I walk into a room, I bring the atmosphere with me. I shift the whole entire context of the room. Now, how do you do that? It starts with you shifting your belief on the inside of you. So I used to deal with a lot of imposter syndrome. And then I came to realize that, hey, I'm the only one that God has gifted a vision for what we're talking about here. So if I don't speak up, if I don't say it, it doesn't get said. If I don't do it, it doesn't get done. So when I walk into the room, I have been given permission to shift the atmosphere. I've been given permission to speak. And I think carrying that energy inside of yourself and speaking to the audience with that energy, I think, just as was mentioned, it automatically translates into passion. And I think when you do that, you can connect with the people in the room, because you get a sense of what you're not just speaking your own words, you're speaking something that's actually going to help them. And when people are getting helped and they're actually hearing it, they become hungry for it. So even though it is hard as a Black woman navigating that and not being taken as the angry Black woman, I have found that when you come in with authenticity, when you come in knowing that I'm there to contribute and to give you something otherwise you wouldn't get, then that confidence really translates. And when I started out in the startup world, I would pitch and I just thought, oh, I'm terrible at it. I don't know what I'm going to get up there. I didn't have any business acumen. I learned that at the Ross School of Business at Michigan later on. And, I would pitch to investors, only Black female again in that space. And time after time, people would come up, investors would come up, mentors I had at the time would come up, and they would say, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, they love it. And what I realized was that based off of their biases, they don't expect women to come in with that confidence, Black women to come with that confidence, that passion, and to know what the heck it is that we're talking about. Everybody on here is brilliant. The audience is brilliant. And we aren't given credit for that. And so I think to them, it was like, oh, a unicorn has stepped into the room, and it was mesmerizing. But I then realized it translates across race and across gender, that people do become mesmerized when they can feel the intensity of the value you're adding in the conversation. And for me, I just focus on that. And some people will receive it, some people won't. But I find most people do receive it. And again, it ties back to that passion. It ties back to connecting to the individual audience members in the room. But really, it ties back to, do you believe and have confidence in yourself? And are you there to say words for a purpose and a mission? And if you are, you've already been granted permission. So you might as well go ahead and say it. Otherwise, the world won't be a better place as a result of that.
Oh,
Vernessa, can I just add to what Dr. Johnson just said, which is just amazing, because she brought up a good point, and I want to make sure that everyone on this phone call or the Zoom call heard it. Own it. And what I also take from that is own the fact that you are a woman. You bring a unique point of view into a room every day. And so smile, wear a dress if you feel comfortable in a dress. It's fine. It's okay. You don't have to act like your male counterparts, okay? Remember, you are a woman. And one of the things I found is that silence can be so powerful. And how you use silence can really be a game changer. One thing I try and do is if I am in a meeting, I try and be the first to speak or the last to speak. And those two, the front and the end, are so powerful, because if you're the last to speak, it says, I was listening. And I really wanted to hone in on some of the key points. And I'm telling you, people will think you are like a genius. If you're first to speak as well, people's like, wow, okay, she's engaged, she's here, she's present, she gets it. And it's so important. And I guess the one other thing, I'm going to give some advice, whether y'all want it or not. You know, Zoom could be our friend, Teams can be our friend, or it can be our foe. And I think one of the things you have to remember when you're on calls like this, especially virtual calls, make sure that you make the best of every interaction and moment. Show up and show up strong. I can't tell you how people get a little too casual on these virtual calls and don't realize that this is their moment to showcase who they are, what they have, and their value, and they waste it away. So show up and show up strong each time. I loved what you said, Dr. Johnson, about owning it.
So this is already great, and I'm like nervous because I don't want us to run out of time, but we could be here all day. I want to pull a couple of threads that I heard that I think are important. Ravyn talked about turning a negative into a positive and reframing that as her personal brand. I'd like to ask each of you, what is your personal brand? What's the importance of having one? And how did you find it? And I know we didn't prep this, but I think it's important. Is it important to have a personal brand that you create or that people create for you? What's yours? How did you find it? And if you have a brand that you feel in your organization is not representative of what you want to be, can you change the brand, and how? There's a lot in there.
I guess I'll go in. You know, my personal brand is this brand. I actually use it for my company, Visionarium, as well, but it started long before the company, which was this brand of vision rich. So I'm very, very much so passionate about this concept that, and you all have to forgive me. I'm a licensed minister. So if I start talking about God and spiritual, you know, that you're just going to have to get a little bit of Jesus in this call. All right. But for me, you know, I always talk about the difference between a dreamer and a person that has vision. Because when you're dreaming, you're in a sleeping state. You don't have to do anything about that. That's just images in your head. So dreamers tend not to execute. But when you have a vision, you're compelled by God to get it done. You don't have a choice. All visions come to pass. It's in the word. And so people that have a vision tend to be those people working a company that are like, I'm not satisfied where I'm at here. I have a greater vision for this organization. I got to get to the next level to enact it. It's people that start businesses. I have a greater vision. It's people that may even just have a vision for their family and their home life, and they are struggling against the odds to make that happen. So for me, my brand is really about having the vision, as we mentioned before, owning the vision, and then understanding that despite the obstacles and the challenges that come against you, that the vision has to come to pass. And if it has to come to pass, then you will survive this obstacle and this challenge. When I've been in the field of engineering, PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Michigan, undergraduate computer engineering and math. I have experienced all kinds of things, sexual assault at international conferences, sexual harassment in the lab, all kinds of racist, slurs and things like that thrown at me. And this is just the reality of it. But if it wasn't for the fact that I held on, that the vision has to come to pass, the purpose enacted in me has to come forward, I probably would have given up. And there was a lot of colleagues I had along the way that gave up. So I'm just very passionate. My personal brand is just hold on to that purpose and that vision, especially as a Black woman, because there's a lot that's going to come against you, but you can overcome those things and keep your eyes on the prize and focus forward if you believe I have a purpose and this has to come to pass.
Love it. Love it. Charisse, what's your brand?
I don't know that I have a truly thought out brand. But what I'd like for people to know about me and equate with me is the word grace. Because as a physician, the one thing that I have wanted to do more than anything in my life is be in service to others. And to Camille's point earlier about lifting those around us up, that is where I find the most value. is helping people not only identify what their aspirations are, but helping them meet and exceed their aspirations. The gifts that are given back to me, sometimes I don't even see that I made an impact. But just the other day, a person that I came in contact with 10 years ago told me that I changed their life. And I had no idea. I had no idea that the simple act of stopping at the OR front desk every day and saying, good morning, how are you today? How can I help you today would change her life in that way. And to me, it is so much about giving and that service. But the other part is we have to be really careful in that service too, because we are not doormats. We are not there for somebody to step on us and keep us down. That is not what being in service means to others. But grace is, as Dr. Johnson said, that ability to walk, to lift yourself up after you have been pushed down, to also find it in your heart to give when you think you cannot give anymore, but maybe even greater, to receive when you need to receive, because we must be filled up. We can't just keep giving and giving and giving. We have to take back, and we have to receive, and we have to be filled. And those are all lessons that you learn. I'm going to say that the place where we are today, the executives that we are today, the leaders that we are today, is not a destination. It is a journey. And it is something that we must do and we must learn from every step of the way, because it is going to be new for us every step of the way. Because as everyone on this call said, there was nobody, when I was coming up trying to be an orthopedic trauma surgeon, at the time, there were only 2 other Black females in the country doing what I was trying to do, and they were nowhere near me. I finally found one, and this was back in the day before email, so I had to put a stamp on a letter and send her a letter to say, can you help me? Can you help me be what I want to be? And she is one of my very dearest friends today and mentor. So I love the fact that we are resilient, but I want to caution that not everybody around us sees that resiliency as a plus. You will still struggle. And no matter whether you use the right tone, you use the right tenor, you're still going to be accused of being emotive, being emotional, being the angry Black woman, the angry Black person, the nigger. I'm just going to call it out because that's what I got called out when I tried to provide service to a patient. But I still was in service to that patient. So it is not an easy road, but it is not an impossible road either. But don't let, I mean, it's a balance. So give, but also be willing to receive. Even when, like Camille said, somebody gonna tell you you're wrong, that was not the way to do that. You gotta hear that because you gotta grow from that. You gotta be there and you gotta, and then learn from that, and then learn from that, and then turn around and help somebody else not to make that same mistake. Don't just keep it all to yourself. Always be reaching back and bringing someone else forward. So if I get branded, I hope it is with the word grace.
Okay. Camille, what's your
Well,
brand?
I'll tell you what, Dr. Sparks, and just so you know, I call Dr. Sparks and Dr. Johnson by doctor because they deserve that respect. They went to school a lot longer than me. So I want to make sure they know it is a pleasure to be here on this panel with y'all, okay? So Dr. Sparks talked about the journey. And one of the things you have to remember is your brand is your promise, but it needs to evolve. The promise you gave yesterday cannot be the promise that you give tomorrow. And so what I mean by that is constantly thinking about how you can evolve. And so if I were to say my brand, I hope the people at Boston Scientific would use these 3 words to describe my brand. that I'm strong, that I'm smart, and that I'm bold. And when I'm bold, I will speak truth to power and ensure that I can go to sleep at night. Okay. So, and I've been consistent in that. But I recognize that, you know, when I was a manager, from when I was a director to when I'm a vice president, those are 3 different roles, to where I'm a mother, to where now I'm an empty nester. You know, these are roles that are evolving and changing. And I think one of the things that we often do is we think what got us here will get us there. And you can't do that. You have to continue to evolve yourself and recognize that your brand has to evolve with you. It can just get stronger and stronger. And so I got to hear what Sister Ravyn has to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, I feel like we've had church and we need to pass the plate around, sisters. I'm over here writing down. No, I'm trying like to be out of the camera taking down my notes, but this is food for my soul. And I hope that for everybody else that you feel like this is soup for your soul. So if I had to come out with my brand, I would hope that it is something like an authentic leader who delivers empathy and results. We've talked a lot about authenticity already, but I think it's important to kind of own the fact that I've also evolved, Camille, in my journey. So when I first started at my company where I am now, I had come in from the field. So I used to be a sales rep who would sell to Dr. Sparks because I was an ortho rep, and had come in-house. And I didn't know how to act in-house. And so I started looking around the room and saying, how should I act? And it felt very different than who I was. So I found myself stifling my laugh. I found myself trying to like mimic how people were speaking. And when I had to cut my hair off, because my hair was actually like Dr. Sparks, I was scared to come into work. So I took the day off, the day I cut my hair, and stayed home and cried for like 4 hours. My best friend had to come over. And eventually I got a message from someone who said, just stare at yourself in the mirror and accept who you are and who, to use Dr. Johnson's words, God has created you to be, right? And so for 2 hours, I sat in silence, staring at myself in the mirror and saying, Ravyn, who is it that God has created you to be? Because there's only one, and we got to let her ride this thing out. And the next day, I walked into the office with this teeny weeny afro, and I called it TWA at the time, but with a little bit of swagger in myself and a little bit of confidence that I had more than the day before. And it was something about walking in and owning who I was that shifted the game. And I hope that we all take that moment to stare at ourselves in the mirror, to be able to sleep with ourselves at night, to Camille's words earlier, so that we can change the game. And so from an empathy perspective, I feel like we are uniquely created to extend empathy, especially as Black women, because we know what the struggle is. We know what it's like to be in a room and not feel like you are being seen. We know what it's like to sit in a room and feel like you are not being heard. We know what it's like as women to have your answers mansplained. We know what it's like. And because we have experienced those different situations, we've developed empathy for others when they face challenges as well. And it is through our shared experiences and stories of how we got over to the other side that hopefully can empower those that are coming behind us to own who they are, knowing that they are going to get to exactly where they are supposed to, and that is with purpose. So I would hope that that would be associated with my brand, is that I am an empathetic leader that helps people realize their own authenticity so that we can all deliver the results that we're looking for.
And
Excellent.
Vernessa, I know we got to get to the breakout room, but I just want to say one last thing. I want to remind everybody on this call that as a part of your everyday, you also look in the mirror, and I do it every day, and say, I love me some Charisse. So if you don't say it to you, nobody else is going to say it to you. So everybody, don't forget that piece. I love me some me. Okay.
All right, so we've made an executive decision because the feedback in the chat and from those who are on is that they want more conversation. So we're gonna do away with the breakouts sessions and just continue the discussion and hopefully allow some time for some questions. I heard vision rich, I heard grace and service, I heard speaking truth to power. Let's talk a little bit about tactics, right? You all have, evolved in your careers. You show up authentically and self-actualized. What if you're not there yet, right? What if you're in your organization and you feel like you are vision rich and that you do have grace and you are service oriented and you have it in you to speak truth to power and you have passion, but you feel like within your organization there are written rules for success and unwritten rules for success, and you kind of are getting more work and fewer opportunities. How do you start to figure out what your next step is, how you create your brand? What did you guys do? You spoke to some of it, but I'd love to hear tactically your concrete suggestions for folks who are still trying to figure it out.
So Vernessa, I'll tell you this, the moment's going to come, not when you're ready, but when you're not. And you've got to take the moment. I'll give you an example. I was 25 years old, working for a chemical company, negotiating a union contract. And the Teamsters guy on the other side kept egging me, even though I was third chair. I finally closed the book and I said, look, if you're not going to talk to me, you're not going to talk to anyone at the table. I'm 25. He goes, oh, honey, sit down. All right, I'll talk to you. I go to the bathroom and I said, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, but I just couldn't let that happen anymore. I'm from New York. We don't get dissed like that. And she turned to me, she said, Camille, that was the best thing you could have ever done because you're coming back tomorrow. If you didn't say anything, you weren't coming back. I was like, wow. So sometimes the moment is going to come and you have to just dig inside you and pull up whatever it is that tells you that this ain't right. This is not right. And there are times when I've been in senior meetings or even board meetings. And if I don't agree, I'll use a phrase like this. I take exception to that comment and let me tell you why. And it's backed up by, let me tell you why. Or, and I don't know if any of my colleagues are on the phone, but I'm going to share a real secret that I use oftentimes. I sometimes put it back on myself. I'm sorry. I'm confused. Make no mistake. I'm never confused.
Camille, I'm going to say, I ask people to think about it differently.
Yeah.
I heard what you said. I appreciate that. But I'd ask you to think about it differently. And here's why, or here's how.
Yeah.
I'd like for you to think about it differently. So absolutely. But I think the biggest thing that sometimes gets taken for granted is you must know and be excellent at your craft. Because that you will be in a position to take the opportunity if you are excellent at your craft. And my example goes back to the first time that I was offered the opportunity to do a surgery by myself by attending. I was still in training, and they don't come around very often. But when it's your turn, when it's time, you have to step up, and you don't know when it's coming. And I didn't know when it's coming. And of course, y'all didn't know the other part of the story. Not only was I the third, but I was in Little Rock, Arkansas. So try that on. So try a little bit of that on for where I was training. And to have my attending physician, so the doctor that is teaching me, take one of the most complicated cases that he's faced and said, okay, now it's up to you. So there wasn't a book I could read the night before. There wasn't, but there was lots of books that I had to read leading up to that. So I knew the anatomy. I knew where I was in the body. I knew what the surgical planes were. And all I had to do was take it step by step by step and do the things that are right. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's all these people that come and help you and want you to be successful and want you to do well. But if you are not prepared fundamentally by really understanding and owning your craft, then that opportunity will pass you by, or you will have to say, no, I cannot do that at this time. So fundamentally, be excellent at your craft above all else.
Amen to that. And as you get great at your craft, then I think understanding the baseline of your brand is super important. So there are a couple of things that I think we can think about tactically about understanding your brand. One is what one of my mentors, Cindy Kent, if people know her, she used to say, well, honey, what's the water cooler talk on you? She said it. She's from Nashville, I'm from Little Rock. So we were both very Southern ladies. So she would just say, well, what's the water cooler talk on you? And I said, well, what is the water cooler talk? She said, well, what are people saying about you when you're not in the room? And I said, I don't know. And so just having these small conversations one-on-one with people to say, hey, do you have an understanding of what people are saying about me, about my work, about my presentation? Not when we're just in the room, but after the room gets dismissed. Another formal way, depending on what organization you're in, sometimes they have what they call these 360 assessments, where you can send out a survey that allows people to give real-time anonymous feedback on you. All right. And I have used this a myriad of times and have encouraged other people to do it, where when it's anonymous and people feel free to write what they want to write, they will absolutely share. So then you get this baseline of data of what people are really saying about you in the room. And if from that water cooler talk, you can't get it one-on-one directly, know the influencers of the people in the room. So can you talk, if not directly to the person, someone who is an influencer of the person or has a good relationship with the person, so that you can get that water cooler talk, know what your baseline brand is, think about, to Vernessa's point earlier, what brand you want, and then start building a tactical plan for how you get there.
Love that. Just in the interest of time, we have about 8 minutes left in this webinar. I would like to open it up if there are those on the platform who have questions. Feel free to put them in the chat and I will share them with the panelists. And while we're waiting for the questions to come through, Dr. Johnson, I want to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Cool. Wonderful. I mean, I'm going to echo the sentiments of Dr. Sparks. I'm going to echo the sentiments of Ravyn and also the sentiments of Camille. To me, I teach this workshop, particularly in corporations, and also to the younger generation, which is called the business of you. So a lot of times we have a sense that we want to be somewhere in a corporation, or we want to be somewhere in our career, but we haven't mapped out the business proposition of that. And so what I mean by that is, starting at the bare elements. What is your value? First of all, what product are you? Right? What product are you actually trying to sell? Right? What product are you trying to own, basically? And then what's the value proposition that product is providing? And furthermore, have you identified the customer for that? So in other words, if you're in a corporation and you say, hey, I have value. Well, what is that value? Is it write it down, even just a bullet point list. What's the value I'm going to add that's unique, right? As was mentioned before. And then who's the customer? who's going to either gain something from this, or whose pain is going to be solved as a result of me advancing to where I want to be in my career, but more importantly, as a result of me being enabled to get to that next step. The other things you need to think about is revenue streams, right? These are all business concepts, but they apply to life. What's the funding for you to get this going? What's it going to cost you? What's your cost structure? And some of the costs are going to be emotional and personal, right? But some of the costs, if you're thinking about, I'm at one level in a corporation, well, what's the cost structure? Let's say you have an idea for something to get to the next level. What's it going to cost the company? Have you put together that even tangible budget, right? When you think about the business of you, who are your key partners? That's mentors. That's people that you're going to influencers, right? Who are the key partnerships you need to form? What are the key resources that you need? So these are all basic, core, foundational concepts that every startup founder has to think about. But when you think about the business of you, realize that everything you do in life, whether it's family, whatever, it is a startup. You got to build it from scratch. And if you own that, and you own the business of you, and you're not just managing the business of you, then that makes it a lot easier for you to sort of say, sell the business of you. In fact, you won't have to sell the business of you. You won't have to sell anybody to put you in this position or that position, because you're basically crafting a product that they already want. You basically pick their brain, determine what's your pain, what can I provide you? Okay, and I want to get to this level. Okay, cool. So let me go back in my little kitchen and work up the startup of me, and then come back and say, hey, I brought you what you wanted. And the other very practical thing I want to add to that is I feel it's a lost art, the business of relationship building. There's a lot of talk about networking and giving out business cards, but relationships are built by getting to know somebody in business on a topic that has nothing to do with business, so that you can get further in business. And it might sound confusing, but people actually, when you develop a relationship with somebody that's nothing to do with what you're asking for, or anything like that, then they connect with you. And when they have a connection with you, when they're in a position, they reach back. And I've had people that I've connected with that reach back. I didn't remember them. And 5 years later, they're reaching out to me on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm now at this company, and I remembered some pitch you gave back when you were some student somewhere. And I just want to know, like, we're trying to do this. Does this fit you? Because they just fall in love with what it is, that the product, right? And they're just like, when I get the opportunity, I'm going to fit that product somewhere. So those are the things, building the relationships, and building relationships means you have to give of yourself first. That was mentioned also. You have to, even simple things, invite someone to coffee and lunch, you pay for the coffee and the lunch. And I hate this as a very lost art nowadays. Never sit down to a coffee date and start drinking coffee, even if the person that you're waiting on is late. Always call them, hey, can I get you something? And those little things make such a big impact. So just when you're thinking about it, not only the business of you, but also the art of relationship building, because that's how you really do move up the corporate ladder.
Love it. Ladies, we could be here all day, and we're getting so many questions in the chat, and unfortunately we are at time, but we are going to follow up on this webinar and make sure that we're connecting. And I'd like to turn it over right now to Beth to give us some closing remarks. Thank you all. You are amazing women. And thank you to everyone who attended for your engagement. Love this.
Yeah, guys, just wow. That was an amazing hour. Best hour of my week, best hour of my month. I'm already planning all the things I'm going to do because of what you guys have said. I'm like, oh, I'm going to respond to this email with passion. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, right? Really, just thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Sparks, Ravyn, Camille, Vernessa, for taking the time to really inspire us with your grace, your passion, your vision, and your stories. Thank you also to the attendees for joining us today. I can tell from the chat, it was as impactful for y'all as it was for me. I hope that you guys have things that you're taking away from this you can put into practice. We also encourage you to connect with one another and continue pulling each other up by signing up to join AdvaMed's and MedTechColor. So please join us for more content like this, join our communities, and continue to be part of this great ecosystem. I'll turn it over to Sarah to close us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our attendees. The great dialogue happening here. I don't have too much more to add, except that we will send out the recording to all of you. We encourage you all, if you're not already, to sign up for AdvaMed's Women's Executive Network, join MedTechColor. It's the collaborations like this that really, I think, create the opportunities for each and every one of us. So I want to thank you, everyone who showed up today, and thank you for sharing your message. Just like Beth, I have a lot of takeaways myself, but thank you all. Have a good day and make sure to stay in touch because we will see you all soon.